And I didn't even know until getting to know the recording for a long time that I was like, well, who's the pianist? So I didn't realize that was her on voice and piano.
Oh, wow.
That was my introduction to Nina Simone. And the beginning of that one, I hear it sounds more like the Baroque influence to me. I guess she comes in, still that Baroque influence, but I can hear. Well, there's a sound of her voices. The band brings in, that.
Let the wind blow through your heart. Wild as wind.
Yes, it's so like romantic coming up this part.
You
All the arpeggios.
touch me. I hear the sound of mandolins.
And then I thought of the example of Centerman and all the influences that she brings together in that one. So like when you hear Centerman, you hear the history of black music in general. I feel like you hear this you hear the Negro spiritual, you hear the ring shout tradition, and you hear in her piano maybe the style of someone like Franz Liszt or something, and it's all mixed together. And I was thinking like the end shows, so like around 8 minutes in, shows this mix like where you have all these influences and then that's the focus on the piano and voice.
So that's actually not on our playlist.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, I'll play the piano version of it, which is gonna be very different with not having Nina Simone's voice. But when she gets to the end and she does these, those like these really these sort of figures that come from that time period, and then and it's coming out of this music that's been like a long ring shout, and so I think that the way she mixes these traditions is very interesting.
It's interesting for us to read about numerous instances where Nina articulated this desire to be the first black female concertizing pianist. And she, in many ways, seemed to kind of reference Andre Watts' career. And this is intriguing for us because, especially with The Dream Unfinished, some of the composers that we're featuring this year are people like Margaret Bonds and Florence Price. And so, like, there's that old story where Nina Simone actually, made it to Carnegie Hall, but apparently she called home and she told her parents, "I'm so disappointed because I'm playing Carnegie Hall, but I'm not playing Bach." And she said that she wanted to be like the first female classical pianist to be in Carnegie Hall. But Margaret Bonds and Florence Price, who we're featuring in our programming this year, they were before her in that sense. They were black female classical pianists who had performed at Carnegie Hall, along with Hazel Scott and others. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, so I mean, it is interesting because I do just wonder what it meant to her, the goal of being the first to do it. Was it something that she didn't see at the time and she knew needed to exist, and and maybe not, I don't know if she was or was not aware of the people you mentioned, and we were talking about other people, someone like Frances Walker, who was a black woman concert pianist, and she's still living. So I'm sorry, I should say what, but she at that time in the 50s did a lot of firsts, and as a concert pianist. So there is the history of it, and we talked going back to Blind Tom Wiggins and how there was like a black classical tradition going back. So I'm not sure what it meant to her, but I was just thinking in general the importance of breaking new ground and I guess just to be able to see more, like maybe they exist, but why are they not given the same notoriety as the European pianists or other non-black pianist. So I think I think it was I could imagine what she was feeling, but also I was thinking it's interesting to me what those hurts can do to an artist. It's like on the positive side, she created her own. She had her own voice anyway, but she created this own style that is nobody else's. Like no. I personally am happy she went the path she went versus this other path that was has been done by others. Because we get to learn from it. But just imagining from her experience, I mean, it's never something that one should be okay with, is to have all of the talent and skill to do something, but society tells you that you can't because of your skin color or your gender.
Well, and it also says something too, if she wasn't aware of people like Francis Walker or Bonds or Price, that already at that point, because they had come before her, had that history kind of been written out. And acknowledging why, I tell people, and I relay this with other people who've studied music, and as I'm sure you can kind of relate with this too, but we go through our educations and conservatories, and we just don't hear names like William Grant Still or Joseph Bouillon. Why is that? Like, why aren't they included in our musicology classes? And if she wasn't aware of them, then to look at that and to consider it. So this is a big question, and I think it ties into everything that you were even just touching on briefly. But so, as I shared with you on the bio, Courtney is not only a really celebrated jazz pianist, but she's also a tremendous classical composer. And so you're really able to straddle both of these worlds. And that was something that Nina had expressed frequently. She felt it was closed off to her. So how do you feel anything with that legacy? That like you're saying, in one way it's this ambivalence because she obviously had these hurts. But if it weren't for those hurts and if it weren't for her struggles, then perhaps you might not have had that role model in her music and in the kind of career that she ended up crafting for herself. So
Thank you. I appreciate it because it's very encouraging to hear what you said. I mean, I definitely have my goals in this lifetime, and I want to take advantage of all the doors that have been opened already, and in the process, hopefully, through doing that, hopefully, we all have our part that we hope to add. To me, I just would say it's important to know the history, and I think that for me, thinking of the idea of first, sometimes before you know about all the people who have come before you and done different things, you have this feeling that you're the first, and that can be a very, it's just good to know about to know the history of a lot of what's been accomplished and what it took to accomplish those things, like the battles that musicians like Nina Simone did, and the musicians before her, and so like William Grant Still and Florence Price, so all of these composers, musicians, performers, to me it's just very important to know that history, and to me that's a part of me knowing who I am, is to know this history. And I guess what comes up, like you mentioned, there's people who are successful during their lifetime, but it's also how people are remembered or how they're very immediately cut out of the history. And so that's something that's actually pretty humbling, because it's kind of like you can have a lot of success in your lifetime, but will people remember or will they not? And to me personally, because I think a lot about these historical figures, and I feel personally about how they're remembered and celebrated. And so for myself, I just think like what makes one's work meaningful and sustaining for themselves. For me personally, I am happy if there are accolades, because that's always a good thing, but I want the music that I'm creating to be, I'm very interested in music and healing, and so I want the music that I do to have some purpose of that, for me and for hopefully for others. And let's see. Oh yeah, I mentioned about the open up. I feel like part of the open up other doors is not so much the idea of like the outside is to me the greatest success is to be able to be your full self in any setting. And with that there's the personal side of that, but there's also what doors are closed to you because of being a black woman or because of your identity. And so that's a reality that musicians have, like Nina Simone. I thought of Screaming Jay Hawkins as well. He was trained as an opera singer in Cleveland Conservatory, and his main goal early on was to be the next Paul Robeson. But he felt that opera world wasn't open to him, and so he started becoming more of a blues musician, and then he started getting into the specific kind of music he was doing. And I think before he died, he was working on an album of Paul Robeson music. I don't think it was ever completed. But there's all these stories of what I would do, and but it's like, but now I've created this whole other sound, you know. So I'm going in circles, but but I'm just thinking about all that, the importance of staying true to yourself and not letting, doing what you can even with all these restrictions that do exist in society, and hopefully through doing that, the next generation, the generation that after that have more opportunities. And I was thinking of something, I kept thinking about this word classical, so I was like, I know that I guess one great thing about Nina Simone is that she's so recorded, both musically and the interviews, and I was thinking about the different things she said about classical. So I Googled some quotes. One of them was, I only knew classical music, which to me was the only true music. The only way I could survive at the bar was to mix the classical music with popular songs, and that meant I had to sing. What happened was that I discovered I had a voice plus the talent to mix classical music together with more popular songs, which at the time I detested. So those are her views from the early times. And then she says, jazz is a white term to define black people. My music is black classical music. So that's another time of how she defines classical music, to like own the term classical. It doesn't have to refer to only Bach and Brahms. It can, refer to this music that all of them, black classical music. And then another quote was, I had spent many years pursuing excellence because that is what classical music is all about. Now it was dedicated to freedom, and that was far more important. So those were all interesting quotes of how she defined classical and her relation to it.
Well, I think that's enough talking, and we should get to some music.
So I was excited to see the list of pieces. As I mentioned, Nina Simone's has so many great recordings and pieces, and I'll play a number of them. I might not get to all of them today that were sent in, but there are a number of them, and so this will be my solo piano interpretation of Nina Simone. So the first one is My Baby Just Cares for Me. as I was younger, and I loved to listen to it over and over again, but I also hope that I didn't have to feel this way ever. And this is called You Can Have Him. And then this one is empowering. Someone sent in this one version of Nina Simone covering Bob Dylan's piece, I Shall Be Released. And I know there's another version that I equally love that was a duet with Nina Simone and Miriam Makeba. It's a different version. But I'll play the one that Nina Simone recorded first. this is the wind. together. So the words are such an important part of this, but for familiar, we know the overall meaning. So there's Mississippi Goddamn and Centerman. So this is the solo piano version.
And if you all enjoyed Courtney's interpretations of Nina Simone, you should be excited to hear that she'll be actually composing a work for the Dream Unfinished that will be premiered this July at our headline event at Cooper Union. And Courtney will be making more appearances throughout her season, so can we all thank her again? Thank you everyone for tuning in online, and we hope you all have a good Friday and a happy Easter. Thank you.